This is Chris Lutz talking to Herman Adkins on July 6th, 1995. Mr. Adkins, can we start off by you telling me where and when you were born?
I was born July 16th, 1918 at Dunleary, Kentucky, or Belgium.
Kentucky, is that where you started with the miners?
I started working in the mines in Kentucky, yes. Started working at Herman Mine February 23rd, 1932.
Well, so you started in the mines when a lot of fights were going to start off around the unions, yes?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about some that might stand out in your mind, some controversies that might stand out in your mind?
I don't know really what you're looking for.
Oh, I'm just looking for you to just tell me about the experience of being a miner in Kentucky.
All right, the first mines I went in, I started helping on a coal cutting machine. A coal cutting machine cuts a stripping out of the bottom 6 inches thick or over top 6 inches thick to give you room to shoot the coal.
Okay.
Now the mines that I started in had large sulfur balls, and a machine would kick out from under the coal when you started to cut. It hit one of them sulfur balls and kick out from under the coal, and you can imagine what the machine was. It weighed almost 4 tons and drug along on the bottom and had a big chain to pull it on the bottom. You put a thing up there and a dead eye down here and pulled it across the place and cut the coal.
When you say you mean the miner? Or
Miners. I was a helper on the machine. The helper shoveled the dust as the machine cut it, shoveled the dust to the side so they could lay track. And you loaded, the helper loaded the jacks, the cable, and everything, the chain and everything on the cutter bar of the machine, and the machine runner run it out.
How old were you then?
I like from from February 23rd till July 16 of being 14.
Wow. And did you join the mine workers when you were just that young?
The mine workers wasn't active at that time in that part of Kentucky. Now in 1933, when we got a right to organize, then I joined the mine workers. But I was at a different mine. I worked some at Praise Elkhorn, and they had 2 mines. One was called Praise Elkhorn and one was called Hagen Elkhorn. And I run a machine and helped on a machine and loaded coal, different things in those 2 mines. I know when I went to Prague and Elkhorn, they gave me a place. That was in 1935. They gave me a place and this rock fell in from the top. And it took me 2 days to clean it up. They said if I didn't want it, there's a man living on a cracker a day outside that would take it. Well, that put a notion in your mind you needed some help. About that time, John Lewis was familiar with the Old Bend Coal Company. And they had a mine, or had a lot of mines, at Jenkins, Kentucky. And he came down there and made a speech. They was organized because his brother was the superintendent of one of the mines, one of the big operations. They didn't have no trouble of organizing. And when they started organizing, we went up to Jenkins. You couldn't hardly get over the road. We had to come down out of where we was at, go up by Shelby, Shelbana is called now, to get up to Jenkins. Jenkins is right on the Pike and Letcher County borders in Kentucky. Actually the most of it was in Letcher County, but they had some mines in Pike County. And then I worked at that mines, and we tried to organize it up until 38. We couldn't organize it, and I guess it's been long enough now, nobody killed, but we went around the outside of the mine. Do you know what a mine looked like? All right.
Except for pictures. Never.
There's this is drift mine. It all started out, you'd think it was level. They've had the hills in it just like you do outside. But, excuse me. The seam of coal went through the mountain, and it may go for 20, 30 miles. If it was low down, it'd go through the low mountain. If it's high up, it'd go through the one mountain. And this one went through the one mountain.
That's high up.
And it was the coal was owned by Virginia Iron and Coal Company, but it was leased to different mines, with the exceptions now of Old Bend at Jenkins. It was owned by the Old Bend Coal Company, had come in there and bought that. Cement and Solvay, a division of Allied Dime Chemical, had a place at Henry Clay, Kentucky, where her daddy in Edgewater, where her daddy lived in the head of Marbone Creek. And they got the coal out of there. They had 8 mines at Rock House. They had about 8 or 10 at Edgewater. And they had 5 mines, 8 mines at Henry Clay.
And is this all bituminous coal?
Over one.
Is this all bituminous coal or anthracite?
It's bituminous.
Bituminous, okay.
All of it was soft coal. It's, at that time, though, when I worked at Pagadale Corn and at the Herman Coal Company and Frazel Corn, you had to get lump coal. If you didn't get lump coal, nobody would buy it. All the fine, or we call it slack coal, nobody would use it till you got to where somebody that made power or used it in a large furnace would use that slack. They usually wanted what's called egg coal. It burnt faster and lasted a little longer, and they could make coke out of it and all of that stuff. So we'd try to get lump coal, and it's hard to get out of the soft coal. And when we'd shoot it too hard, or have to shoot it twice, just tore it up. In fact, I've loaded coal at Peg and Elkhorn. I've loaded coal in the car that I couldn't lift one side of it. Take a bar, and I had me an extra bar, and I'd lay it up, and I'd slip a lump of coal up in the back of the car, tear the back end out of a lot of cars. But that's the way it went. And you had to have, at that time, a full set of tools. Now, you just got part of my tools up there. I'm going to get the rest of them for you. But you had to have even a file your auger with. You had to have an axe, where you ever needed it or not. You had to have an axe. There's so many things that wasn't absolutely compulsory. You could always, two people working in a place, they could use one another's tool. And you got to go. She's going in there to get her hair fixed. So if you didn't have tools, if you didn't have the boss come around and checking your tools, and if you didn't have a file, for an example, he'd tell you to have a file the next day, or take all your tools, go home. Now, at Peg and Elkhorn and at Behrman, and what little I worked for Crazy Elkhorn, the coal was 36 cents a ton. And what you had to do, you had to lay at least 6 foot of track every day to run the car on. And you had to set 2 safety timbers up at the pole, and you had to set 2 line timbers back to make the line of timbers to hold the slate. And you shot the coal. We shot with black powder. We'd buy a keg of powder at the time, a 25-pound keg of powder, set it outside, and then we had a flask that held enough for so many shots, and you'd fill it up when you take it in the mine. And then you had paper, brown paper, that you rolled that in and made the shot that you wanted. And then that's what you used that needle for, you see up there in the tamping bar. We'd run it back where we wanted it in the hole, and use damp, slack coal or little dirt in it to tampen that hole to hold it in there so you get a good shot. And you had to be careful. You'd twist that needle and bring it out without tearing the hole up. And you shot with a squib.
Like a firecracker?
Yes, only it was a squib. It was what it was, about 8 inches long, and the end of it had some pressed powder in it. And this was all filled with powder out to a certain point, about an inch and a half of just paper that you could light. And you'd put that up in the hole and light this end of it and run it.
Yeah, this must be incredibly dangerous.
Get behind something, and when that squib had run, when it hit that powder, that press part up here was a little heavy, and it would run it back to where the powder was, and when it got back there, it set off the powder. Well, we had to furnish the powder, the squibs, and we worked with a carbide light. I believe I left my light up there.
And did you always work in teams?
Do what?
Did you always work together? Always?
Always
Did a
in
miner
teams?
ever work alone?
Oh, yeah. I worked alone most of the time.
Wow.
But you see a mine, you got a piece of extra paper?
Hey, just use back this.
All right. See, a mine is going to run this way. That's the point. Outside the dirt. But the engineer lays it off. Now there's a point of coal up here and this way. Now to get that out, you start from down here. You drive ahead in the air course. That's the way they used to do it. They got to drive 3 each now to have air. And it neck off entry here. To get that call, they call it one left. They neck off one over here, call it one right. It didn't, all they got was the coal that was in those places. The ahead and the air course, each one. And when they got this worked out, got this up here and got up to the line, got it worked out, then they started making what they call rooms. A room would go off, but to go this way. Them rooms was, excuse me, they had to be, the room had to be 14 foot wide, and they'd come down so far. And what to do, they had to start up here so they'd get the fall on the slate from up here to keep it from getting down on this. And they'd only come down and leave about a 60-foot pillar of coal here that nobody got until they pulled this back. They called this pulling pillars. But they got the last entry, say that was one left, and they had 1, 2 left, 3 left, 4 left, or whatever it was. And they started at the last one.
Work way back.
And that's I've got black lung and I can't hardly talk. What they do, they'd drive all of this up. And then they'd start right here pulling pillars. And they'd pull these and then you come plumb down doing that till they got down as far as they wanted to go. And then to start
Tops off, you can see it.
Another area. But I did have a map at the house of the mines that I worked in later. And the engineers marked all of this when it was worked out. They marked it worked out as nobody is supposed to go up in there, but of course they did. And
this is all very skilled work, right? So, I mean, this seems to be very highly skilled. Well, did you get satisfaction from doing this highly skilled job, or was it so hard that it was just, you didn't think in terms of satisfaction?
well, the best way to explain it to you, there was nothing else to do in that part of the country. And to live, you had to work in the mines. I wouldn't have went in there at 13 if it hadn't been. My uncle just got out of World War I, and he was staying with us. He helped to get me a job. And my stepdaddy went in the mines the first day. But he had what was called miner's asthma at that time. was nothing in the world but black lung. But they called it miner's asthma, and he couldn't stay in the mines, and I had to work then by myself. Now I started working then at a place called Federal Mines. It's just about 10 minutes from Elkhorn City across a railroad bridge. And they had sandstone top, and the most places sandstone bottom. It was easy to work, and you didn't have to timber too much. But Lord, it was low, and how come we call it scratchback? Little knots would come down where you'd shoot the coal. Little knots would come down out of that sandstone, and men would scratch their backs, me included, every time they turned around. Now that mine, we long-walled it. Now, you don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
All right. In this place here, men would work in here, and they'd place some cars in here, and they would load the cars one by one, and they'd change them out. And most of the time, you had to change them out yourself. You had to. I've got scars on my shoulder where I put the car and got a hold of the rail and pulled it to give me more strength to pull the car out, let it go out, get me another car they had left me, and take it back into place. But now the long wall, they would go here. A man would be working here, and they'd set him a trip of cars, say 25 cars in here. And he'd shoot that coal down here and load all of it in that trip of cars, and he didn't have to change on himself. Then when he got through to get the rest of his coal over here, he'd set a row of timbers where the track was, and then he'd take crowbars and slip this track over 6 foot and have another.
Okay, he slipped the track over by himself?
No, sometimes it'd be 4 or 5 on the long wall. Most of the time,
4 or 5 in many.
most of the time it'd be 2. Man and his son, or man and his brother, or 2 people well known. They like getting 2 people up and load the same amount of coal. Because if you didn't, well, for an example, I'm getting ahead of myself, but after I went to West Virginia, as far as I know, I have the record of loading the most coal that's ever loaded in one day, 7 hours and 15 minutes. Loaded 44 ton of coal, 7 hours and 15 minutes. I had 2 places, had to lay the track and set the timbers in 2 places, drill the hole and shoot the coal in 2 places. But it's about 51 inches of coal, and man, that was just honey. And as fast said, I was loading in a 3-ton car, and as fast said put the car in, I'd load him just in a few minutes, they'd be back. But
well, you know the song 16 tons, what do you get? Well, what do you get for 44 tons?
Well, at that time, we was getting 66 cents a ton.
So.
But now the hardest work that I done was at these little mines I worked at, and you got the same per ton, but you had to get it in such hard ways. You had to push your cars in and out. You had to hunt your timber, you had to hunt your track. All that stuff was extra on it. Now in Bragg and Elkhorn and in Praise Elkhorn, they had what is called Shiloh. That's an impurity in the coal, and you can't load it. You had to throw it back to the sides, take your rock that fell and build you a wall and throw that over behind your rock wall. That was called Shiloh.
Shiloh, like the battle?
And that was hard to do. Is sometimes you get 6 inches shallow, sometimes you get 12 inches shallow. Sometimes it was soft enough to you could shoot it and load a lot of it. Sometimes it was so hard you couldn't do nothing but job it. Put it in the side. You didn't get nothing for them. Now if slate, you had a slate fall or you had bad slate you had to pull, you got paid by the yardage. And it after 6 inches, it didn't count nothing. Well, after 6 inches, say you had 7 inches of slate to come, 7 inches thick. Then you get paid for a whole 7 inches. But if you didn't have but 5.5 inches, you didn't get paid nothing. I've had it fall many a time where it'd be 16 foot wide and 6 foot deep. All you had to take it, that beat it up, take it all for nothing. But that was the game, and we knew it, and we didn't holler about it till we got a union. Now we got paid for the impurities after we got a union. And we didn't have to lay any track after we got a union that we had to put a spike in. They developed a latch tie across from one rail to another. And you just turned that latch around to hold that on the rail. That we done right on. But if we had to drive a spike to hold a rail like you do on a railroad, we didn't have to do that. Now, the first thing that happened that we call it done there, it's Bragg and Elkhorn. My check number there was 20, and you had a little brass check about that big with a hole in it that a head of a nail would go through. And it was supposed to be on the inside of the car as to keep other people from stealing your coal. You'd put your check on there the first thing you done on the inside. Then you'd fill that car up with coal. Then when you go out, the company check weighman at that time would take the check off and give you the weight that showed on the scale for that coal. Now, if you had in Berryman and Praise Elkhorn, they had where the cars come out here and come to a tipple to dump it. Where it come out, they had a curtain across there, a rubber curtain. And if your car didn't touch that, if your coal didn't touch that curtain when you come out, you got docked. Say you're loading about a car, a ton and a half car, and if it didn't touch the curtain, you get a ton. They'd knock a half a ton off. And there was no reasoning in them at all.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't run no man trips at Brazil for him. They used mules. And they do what they call gathering. They'd bring the coal out here, out of this place and out of this place, this one and this one, and they'd have a sidetrack. Maybe they'd run the coal back up here, and then there was a tram motor that'd come and get that coal and take it out. Now, that's Brazil. Then they take it out, and when they took it out, they take it down the hill. They had a tram that went down that hill. A loaded car would come down, or two, whatever it was. They'd go down here, and they had a wheel here that a steel rope would go around. It would take that car on down to the bottom. And it'd pull right here is where the two cars pass. The hill tram they would pass right here at this That's still running?
Now it is, yeah.
You must have plenty of cartridges.
Okay. We were on the hill trams.
Now, this would come down here. The tipple would be way out here. And the railroad would be down here. And they'd bring that coal out, bring it down here, and they had two mules they called tram mules. This big, this huge mule. They'd come out here, and when that car had come down the hill, they'd turn these mules around. You had to keep their head towards the car till you wanted to go. And they was trained till when they came around, the man that had the chain to hook them to the car had to hook it on the fly, because when them mules turned around, they was a-going. And they hauled that car out here, and they began a sidetrack, and it was downhill. When they bring it here, them mules would step off here, and that car would keep going out here to and it had a big metal piece here that would stop it. And then the tipple people would dump it there. But this was all done with mules, and the company would have a big wreck in the mines at this Brazil point. And the first thing the boss would ask, did you get our mule hurt? Never asked if got a man hurt.
Yeah.
Get a mule hurt. And that was the job to train them. But the way you worked those mules, you didn't holler like we do out here, G and Hall. You hollered Dewey and Hal. And well, they get used to that, just like you do G and Hall. And they'd come out of the place here with coal. Maybe this would be a hill down here. Be a long hill. The guy driving the mule would unhook him when he felt the slack in that, he would step aside, have a place to step aside. He'd step aside, the car would go on down, but the driver had to be able to get that hook that goes in the length of the car. As he come by and hook it, or the mule just keep going. Didn't have no reins or nothing on him. And they'd, a good mule driver is worse thing. So they'd get off and hook it again. And that old mule just keep going.
You know, you've been describing this highly skilled job that still needs people who are real nippy on their feet. So you've got an old man's game and a young man's game at the same time. It must have been very hard for a young man to come in here and not have those skills, or an older man to keep working.
Well, it was hard, but the hardest thing in the mine was running a machine or helping on a machine. And I started real early in doing that. I started in Berman with a guy by the name of Theodore Potter that I was helping him on that old C.E. Sullivan machine, and I worked a while on that. Then when I went to Paragon Elkhorn, I started helping on the machine, and my machine runner got his leg broke, and I had to start running, just like that. I've been covered up in the mine with slate, cutting coal. You go up like this, you're going to cut this out. You're supposed to leave a pillar of coal between this. But a lot of these mines want you to cut through, and what you do, instead of cutting just one place, you cut across. And when you get out to the outcrop of that coal, no way to hold the slate. I know one time I was working in Paragon Elkhorn, and my first cousin was helping me. That's when that boy got his leg broken. And that, you don't know when the slate is going to fall, because you'd be cutting here. And 6 foot up here, it'd break loose up to where you was cutting. And then fall back where you was at. These old machines, that's the Goodman machine.
A Goodman machine?
They had one live rope on it. Excuse me. That was hard, that one live rope. On each side of the machine, you pull that machine wherever you wanted. On the bottom, it weighed 4 tons. And you only pull it with the live rope, and then you had a dead rope. And that dead rope had a crank to it, just like a, I don't know how to explain it, but it was a crank. And the live rope had a crank, and the dead rope had a crank. And it was all 12, 14 inches apart. Well, when that slate fell on me, it just broke up. It was that outcrop slate. It just broke up. Rolled me to the ground. My head went right down between them 2 cranks. Actually, there's control of the bar. But what you had to do, you had to take that machine up here. This is the face of the coal. You had to take that machine up there and what we call sumping it up. You go in the right-hand side and go in as deep as you wanted to go. Then you go to the left-hand side and set your jack. And and pull that, change your ropes in. You've got this one to pulling up. You have to take it down and take it over there. Take your dead rope over here and set it to holding machine, keep it from jumping out. And pull it in across here as far as you wanted it to go. And that made it twice as hard of work. Now, Jefferson Company built two machines. They built one with double live ropes on it. And that was a good machine to work, but it would, but I lost that hand on a Jefferson that laid down on the bottom, and it weighed right at 6 tons. And it had a fingertip control on it. Well, I wanted to go to running a motor. Been on that machine, that dust is killing me. The old boss told me that if I'd learned the guy to run the machine, he'd let me have a motor. I said, he can already run it, but I'll try him out tonight. Big black guy, about 6 foot and 4 inches tall, wonderful guy. We had 10 places to cut. We cut 9 of them places. And I told him, I said, now Lonnie, I'm going to help you, and I want you to cut that other place down there, and told him what the boss had told me. Well, you got to pull those ropes and put them in dead eyes and what have you, get them across the place. And I was pulling that across, and I had a broke wire that caught my glove and caught that finger, and pulled that right around that pulley as idlers or pulley wheels. That it went from around it. I had to crawl about 136 yards, I believe it was. I had to crawl out from under loco. And then I had to go outside. They had shot the top a little, but you still had to squat to get out of there. I had to go out, and all I had was myself. And we had first aid training. I'd let the blood squirt a little bit, and then hold your hand behind you and keep it going. That was about 10:30 at night, and I got it dressed after 10 o'clock the next morning. That's the only cup of coffee I ever drank in my life. They told me if I drank coffee it'd keep me awake.
Okay, so when did you, well, let me ask first, how old were you when that happened? About?
This?
Yeah.
About 22, 21, 22.
Were you scared being that young? I mean, when you were 14 to 22, you were a real young man doing this work. Was it scary?
Everything's scary in the coal mine. The first man I ever saw killed in the coal mine was, he was working like this is 10 left. We was working in here, me and my uncle, and he got killed over here, but there was breakthroughs through here. And we went over there, and there's a piece of slate about 16 foot wide and about 12 foot deep that had fell on that guy and broke in two right on his head. and there's only me and one other guy that would get him out of there. We had to take on the machines and the motors. You had a jack like a rail. You know what a railroad jack is? Okay, you got it's like an old well pump, only it's a lift jack. And we put that down between the rocks and spread it apart so we'd get to him. And then took two jacks, one on each side of where it was at, raised it up, but we had to put him on Bradish cloth. It was a rubber cloth. We had to put him on Bradish cloth, wrap him up and get him out. You could hear every bone in him was broke. And you talk about scared. Now every time I hit a drop of water, there's all the time water or little pieces of slate or something fall in the mouth. And every time I'd hear one, I'd jump. And that went on for weeks and weeks, maybe months. But you're always scared. You know it's subject to fall in at any time. And I was strong, young and strong, and done a lot of extra work like on a mine wasn't running later on a Thursday or Friday. They'd get us to lay track. Me and the guy that cut that finger off take a 60-pound rail. They brought those rails in to the mine in a coal yard, and you had to unload it. And it'd take 8 and 10 men to unload it. But me and Lonnie and old Brown, George Brown, he's a big black guy too. We could each of us get a hold of one end of those rails and put them up and drop them over the side. We could go in the mine and take those rails and put them where they wanted them. So we got to work a lot of extra time, but it was killing to do it. But you didn't know no better, and you just tried to do.
Well, when did the mine workers come in? Tell me about joining the mine workers.
All right. In 1933, we got a right to organize, and that was when the Wagner Act was passed. And we started to organize, and we started having little wars. Now, I worked in this Dunleary mine, or Crag and Elkhorn, a lot when I was organizing that area. It was organizing cement solvay at Henry's Lane. Well, I had a little war over there. The governor that we had got elected, Happy Chandler. We got him elected, and he put the National Guards in there. And the guy that we had got elected sheriff put the sheriff deputies in there. And they killed one of our guys while I was trying to organize that, and shot up I don't know how many more. In fact, from that mine, I've got a bullet in my side, a little old 32 squeezer bullet in my side that me and a guy had a fight over that mine. But we would start when John Lewis come to Old Ben at Jenkins. That's Consolidated Coal Company at Jenkins. Old Ben Coal Company on it. I hope you don't mind me losing my time. We started organizing anything we could organize. Now I got out of a job, a help organizing there, and went to Big Beaver Creek up at McDowell and got a job at Elkhorn Coal Company. I got a job running them over there. And then we came back to organize Dunleary, Paragon, Elkhorn. And it was tough. Couldn't organize them. They had a union earlier and broke it. And you couldn't do nothing with them, so we went around like there was these places drive out here, they call them manholes. And they brought timbers in from the mountain. They cut timbers out here to hold a slate. And they'd bring them in through this. And they always had a lot of that timbers out there that dried out. We found out we couldn't organize them as certain guys went around and piled that dry timbers in the drift mouth and set them apart. Smoked them out. It never did run them over. We had on that mine, we had to go up a mountain. They hauled us up to go to work. But we had to walk off of it, and it was a long, hard mountain to walk up or down. And when they didn't have no steam, their major power was steam. Didn't have no steam, they didn't run the man car up and down the hill. So it was tough. That was Paragon Elkhorn. Now, we tried to organize at that time Claysfield Coal Company.
Claysfield?
Claysfield Coal Company. And we never could organize them until World War II.
How come?
Just a bunch of people in that Virginia area, and that company owned everything in there. We'd go in there, have an old A model car, go in there, we'd have to wrap a rifle up in a tow sack. We call it a coffee sack. Wrap it up and tie it to keep it from getting wet and muddy. Tie it up to the bottom there. If within the guards and the state police would take it away from you at state line or county line, whichever was quick. But we had a terrible time there. But when I was 15 years old, there was an organizer in Harlan County. I hadn't been working too awful long. It was organized in Harlan County, and some of my friends told me they wanted a young guy to go down there and talk to the people that's going to have a big meeting. George Titler, George Gilbert, Sam Caddy, that whole group was going to be in there. They're all board members. All right. That's right down my alley. I went just before you go up to Black Mountain. There was a little old red schoolhouse. I stood in that schoolhouse at me 15 years old, talking to people what the union could do for them and what they should do. I know them other guys just laughing their heads off because they was older men. I never got hurt there, but I had some friends that got killed, had some friends shot up. I know George Gilbert, he was a representative at that time, and I seen him bury 2 automatic shotguns. Automatic shotguns wasn't that plentiful at that time. But to hide him afterward, I saw him bury him and mark the place he buried him. He'd put him in a paper sack, working them in a paper sack, put them in the ground and cover them up. And that was what they called Bloody Harlan. But that wasn't half as bad as it was in Pike, Boyd, and Letcher County. It was worse than Harlan County ever was. And we organized one man at a time. Now in 1941, going with the organizing. In 1941, I was president of the local union at one of Cement and Salvage mines at Kingston, West Virginia, right in the head of the holler. The only way you could get out of there was down Paint Creek or across the hill and out in Austin. 12 mile out to Oak Hill. And we started organizing New River Coal and Lumber Company at Wyden, West Virginia. I took 23 men over there out of Marlow, Virginia, and stayed 29 days out of 31 in 1941. All we had to eat the first 20 days was cheese and bologna sandwiches. We got a guy killed. The young man, they killed him with a .22 high power, first one I ever saw. That's in Wyden County, West Virginia. Well, M.M. Neely was the governor, and a guy by the name of Crumpecker was the chief of police.
Crumpecker?
And he was, he died on that picket line with a heart attack. He come up and made a talk to us and died. But they set up police with machine guns. That's the first machine guns I ever saw. They set up machine guns over in a certain area, like over here, with no man's land. They'd tell us not to go over there, and they told the company people not to go over there. And the state police, there was a road went around almost like this is diagrammed there, around wide. And that company charged those people 10% of what they made to keep it in the bank. They had their own bank, and they charged them 10% when they get it out. Now they could traded on a due bill or scrip again. Didn't cost them no interest in the company store. But if they got money out of the bank, it cost them 10% interest. And we never organized that. We struck that all that time. We got that man killed. We never organized that until Thanksville bought it out, and we organized it. But that was Elk River Coal Lumber Company. Go ahead.
Why were the mine owners, the operators, so reluctant to just say, well, unions are here and let's just live with it?
You wouldn't believe if I tell you that I have seen in Logan County, West Virginia, they made the power of the city with coal, with steam, and I've seen them take black men and they'd bring in there and white men, knock them in the head and throw them in that furnace if they didn't do what they wanted. And
The company owned everything.
I
You did
worked
it their way,
there.
or you didn't do it. You did it their way, or you didn't eat. You had nowhere to stay.
You done it with enough people that had enough guts to make them do something. That's the only way you could do it. You didn't do like you're picketing around now. You didn't do it that way.
You should get shot, I guess.
Do what?
Wouldn't you just get shot if you did it that way?
Well, you got a chance to.
Possibly.
But again, which is the best? Get shot or see your children starve?
Yeah. Which brings me to my next question. When you did organizing, when you tried to get people to join, did you go to their homes too?
Go to their homes. I've went to people's house many, many, many times. And they'd know I was coming. And they'd say, don't turn on no light. I've seen people that were afraid to talk to you around the company. Afraid that somebody would get them after. Now, after I worked in Kingston until they shut that mine down in 1950. And I was a check weighman. I'd been elected president of the local union and check weighman. That was a guy that was on the outside of weighing the coal when it come out to see that people see if the scales is right, see if the people got the right tonnage. And they shut the mines down, no doubt in my mind, to get rid of me. When they, again, that was cement and solvent. When they did, I went to New River to get a job. And while I was there, my wife got a hold of me by phone and said, "You got a letter here from Denny Lewis." That's Johnny O. Lewis's brother. I said, "Open it and read it and see what it is." She opened it and read it, put me on the payroll at $250 a month at Logan, West Virginia. And that was a hot spot. What happened, Denny Lewis was in charge of District 50 and the United Construction Work. And his brother was, younger brother, R.O. Lewis, was Secretary Treasurer of District 17. And they was trying to run R.O. out of Logan County, and they was afraid they was gonna kill him, and what have you. And he just had enough guts to. He didn't do it. The vice president and got in a fight. The vice president was a lot larger than he was. Beat him up a little, and he rolled him up a roll of nickels. And you know, I never saw our old Lewis after that, but what he had that roll of nickels in his hand, in his pocket. And you don't know what you can do with a roll of nickels till you try.
Like brass knuckles.
Now, he was at our house many, many, many times. And they had, when I went to Logan County, Island Creek Coal Company was a controlling company in there. They had some other large outfits. But the top representative in the Mine Workers Union was a man by the name of Triola, Mel Triola, an Italian, of course. And he had let that company got away with everything. And we used the mine workers office District 50 people had. But I'll explain to you if you don't know, District 50 was a group of people in New England, in the utilities, that wanted to organize. When we organized the CIO, at that time, nothing organized but the CIO. I mean, but the AFL. And they were fighting the CIO because they wanted to have a craft-type union. And of course, the CIO was an industrial-type union. Everybody in a plant or a factory was in one union, and they had different skills, different lines of progression in seniority and all. And these people, that's New England Gas and Utilities, they wouldn't have nothing but John L. Lewis's union. So that changed the whole union. What they done, they put a section in the Constitution that District 50 would be run a certain way, and that mine workers would they'd not be a voting member of the mine workers. They'd have their own District 50 and their own local union, but they had no constitution. Now, after, well, in 1959, they passed the Land and Griffin bill. And that permitted us to organize with no authority. We could organize, but we couldn't use the National Labor Relations Board. And 1959, they passed that bill and said we could use the National Labor Relations Board. And then there was in that bill said that all members of a union had the right to vote, all had the same right. That would have meant the coal miners and the factory workers would have had the same right to vote on the mine workers. mine workers met and took action on that and asked District 50 to make their own constitution. We were paying them 50 cents a member for a due. And they just forced us out, really. And a lot of us were old mine workers. And they formed District 50 United Mine Workers, and we built our own constitution and voted on it in 1961. Now, I was elected board members, 5 board members elected in that group. We had 250,000 members. We had 5 board members. And the board member had to be a troubleshooter. Say, Dow Chemical, for an example, had problems in the local union, or it didn't have nobody to negotiate contracts and what have you. We was assigned to do that. And that was all over. It wasn't just Dow Chemicals, anything else. So I was elected board member on that. And then before the next election, Denny passed away. And Elwood, Moffett, and Denny had been into a big fight. Elwood was vice president of the organization. What happened, they had people that stirred it up. Denny was sick, was home sick. Well, Elwood wrote a letter to John L. and some of the other top officials in mine workers and invited them to our convention. When they did, they took that letter to Denny, and him sick, he just went to pieces about it and thought they were just trying to take over. Do you feel any better?
That's good. Uh-huh.
We had out and made our own constitution. Then the guy that was elected president, Elwood, was elected president. And
So was Denny right? Was Denny right? Was he really trying to
Push him out.
push him out?
not, you don't know. Elwood was from Pennsylvania, out of one of the anthracite fields, and I understand him and his father didn't even get along. His father was president of the local union before he got older. I know he was a nuthead afterwards. And they got into a fight, and they called a board together. Of course, I was on the board, and at that time, they had another election and had 5 more board members, made 10. And we voted to take District 50 out of the mine workers and give them a new name. Well, actually, the name we gave District 50 at that time was Allied and Construction Workers. Now, I got ahead of my story a little bit there. Denny Lewis, how come him in charge of District 50? When they had the bust, AFL and CIO had the bust in 1935. The board wanted Denny to stay on in the AFL. He was president of the United Construction Workers in the AFL. He stayed on, and when they finally got busted, he brought the construction workers and affiliated them with District 50. At that time, John L's daughter was Secretary of Treasury of District 50 and ran District 50, Catherine. And then when, of course, you set up your own constitution, they elected a Secretary of Treasury. By that time, Catherine had passed and Denny had passed. And Elwood had taken over, but he wanted to take over with all of his people. We didn't say nothing. The board was split. And they had a guy by the name of Angelo Cepolo. And he wanted him to be elected as his vice president. So we wanted a guy by the name of Daniel Sandy, who was on the first board, to run for the position. Elwood didn't want it. I told Elwood one night, I said, is it all right with you if I talk to Cepolo? I said, I'm not going to vote for him until I see what he is, because I knew he was a skunk. And he said, yeah. Well, I went to the hotel with him. I asked him what if he was going to double cross Elwood, because we'd had enough trouble. No, I won't. I said, okay. But in 4 years, he was right there double crossing. The mine workers sued us then for $2,002,000. Had a trial in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal in Richmond, Virginia. And they ruled against District 50. The old judge was 82 years old. He didn't care half of what was going on. They appealed it, set it aside, and threw the mine workers in to have to pay the cost of the suit. But we was free then to do what we wanted to do. And that 50 cents a member would go a long way, because most of our dues was only $2.50 or $3.
What do you think? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to rest a little bit. Go ahead.
All right, I was going to say, what do you think the best years of the United Mine Workers were? What were the explorer years?
Oh, when we organized the CIO, that gave us strength to operate on.
What did you think about the merger then? When the AFL-CIO merged, did you think it was a good idea?
If it would have been a merger, that they would really have been a merger and took the craft out and put them in the craft union and put the industrial type unions in the industrial type, yes, it'd have been good. But Meany didn't want that. And of course, we had a guy that was one of the first vice presidents of AFL when we got out, it come right out of District 17, coal mining district. She and I had been married. There was many a time when I left the house, I didn't know where to come back or not, or she didn't either. And people talk about working hard or doing without. We were married 53 years ago, the 6th of May. On the 7th of May, she went down to get a script on me for us to eat on. I turned her down. The time hadn't been turned on. I turned her down. She was just 16 years old and couldn't get $1 in script.
And you said, shoot, too late now.
You know what script is?
Yeah.
She figured it.
You did. Did a lot of the wives figure?
Yeah, they were on strike, and there was an injunction against the mayor office. They couldn't strike, they couldn't get us ladies out there, big snow on the ground, all the street car, all these oil rings. And we people got there, we didn't let anybody go up there.
As man, my good friend went up to the picket line. There's two real big, heavy-set black women. And most of them had straight razors at that time in their hose. And this guy went up. What was it Johnny said to him? Said he was going to work, drove up.
Going to work, this black lady, walked over there, a bunch of us just standing there, walked over there, came to me. She said, you're not going to work today. You turn around and go back.
She pulled up that dress, didn't she, and show him that.
She just had her hand there. We had some time.
Well, here, maybe stop this. And this is Herman Adkins. Miss Adkins, what's your first name?
Gladys.
Okay, because we want to get you in here too. And today is July the 18th, 1995.
I'm a year older than I was.
This is tape number 2. Mr. Adkins, why don't you tell me about the organizing drive in Virginia?
In where?
In Virginia. At Saltville, Saltville,
I'd
Virginia.
many of them in Saltville, Virginia. That was the Saltville Matheson Chemical Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Olin Matheson, married with Matheson. Matheson was the conservative end of the company, and Olin was the more liberal end of the company. A guy out of New York by the name of Art Gertson, came down and negotiated a contract. They wouldn't negotiate a contract. I got a picture at the house where was having our dinner at the contract signing, and the personnel man up there, it showed him sent down here, wouldn't have his picture taken with him. And old Art Gertson laughed his head off at it. He had a guy on the Matheson side was Art Badu, and he was very conservative, very strict. Let me look at this one time. See this? That's when the meeting was called. First meeting that Elwood had.
This is 1962.
After he became president.
Oh, and I see you were regional director then.
Mm-hmm.
All right, for District 50.
I'd take both of these, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, why did they, Gladys was just saying that they dragged your proposed coffin through the streets.
Well, they wouldn't let us on company property to organize. And, excuse me, I didn't do what you told me. That company had tram lines to haul its rock out of the mines, and had 3 different junctions on it, but it's about 7 miles of tram line. And they took that wore-out round table that's about 2 inches and hired a contractor to come in and staple that down to the ground on their property, right to the side of county property. And we couldn't get over that until there's 16-inch snow up there one time. They cut the tires off my car 3 times. Had to park it way up on the side of the road. Old mean guys would come by and cut it off of it. But we went in there. They had tried that many, many times. Everybody said, no, it can't be organized. I told Mr. Lewis I could organize. Now that's Denny Lewis. You know, I've been talking about 2 Lewises. And he gave me the men and let me organize it.
How many men did he give you? How many men did he give you?
Well, I had anywhere from 9 to 16 in there, but we had to hunt them out one at a time. They would not sign in front of their children. I know there's one little man that told me big snow on the ground and he'd had a plant, and I offered to help him. Said, no, they won't let you over here. He's in the parking lot. And he said, nobody's come to see me yet. I said, well, where you live? He told me, whispered out of the corner of his mouth and told me. I said, there'll be somebody there to see. Well, I went to get him, and he told me to meet him at the mouth of a little holler. And it was a culvert. And he got out of that culvert. When he saw my car come up, he jumped out of that culvert and run, got in the back seat of my car and fastened it down and told me to go. And he told me ever bend, ever move in that mountain road till we got to a place that we could pull off and park. And we pulled off and parked, and he signed the car, got back into the car, told me, said, take me back to where you got me. I took him back. I went in the house with one guy that had a 12-year-old girl. We was right ready to have the election. And the girl, the old man wouldn't let his girls see him sign that card, membership card. It didn't do nothing, only give us a right to present it to the labor board. Let's go back a little bit on this. We didn't have the right to use the National Labor Relations Board as other unions had at that time because of the Taft-Hartley. And John Lewis would not sign 2 affidavits that they required. He said it'd make us second-class citizens. So after Landon-Griffith bill was passed, it gave us the right to organize and petition. So them's when I give Denny the word, and he gave me the right to go in and organize. And it was right on the North Fork of the Holston River, right across from Chill Highway, Virginia, going across two little mountains. to go over to the plant, but the plant sat right on the North Fork of Holston River, and they polluted the river until the government made them close the plant. They got the first contract for a benzene fuel to go in rockets that they were. And they couldn't do much fighting. That's the reason Art Gertson come down from New York, because they could lose that in a minute. Excuse me. So there's 1,137 people in the plant, and their personnel man had years prior to that, 20 years or something prior to that, went to New Orleans and got information of how to set up a independent union, a company union. And they set up what was called the SMEA, Matheson as Employees Members Association.
Okay.
Matheson Employees Members Association. Now the company fought for them. The company only got out of that 1,137 votes. There's 3 of us on the ballot, and the company got 21 votes. SMEA got Bryce Martin's a lot that didn't vote, but we had to count against all of them. And we won by 1 vote. The old board agent, a guy by the name of Smith, you know, this boy that played ball for Philadelphia, Smith played baseball.
I'm not a baseball person.
Same name that he's got. And he counted them twice. That's a lot of counting, 1,137. And that old personnel man and that old plant manager was eyeing him every move he made. So he said to them, when they got through, he said, "That's enough." And that old personnel man, no, said, "Count them one more time." He said he started counting, got up to about 15. He said, "I'm not going to do it." Said, "I've counted twice." And said, that's it. Said, "They'll be sealed. And if the board agent wants to count them, that's, director of the board in Baltimore wants to count them, okay, but I'm not counting." So they certified it. But they filed charges about everything that was coming or going. Now, to keep us from organizing, we'd rent a restaurant, have a meeting in, or the American Legion Hall in Saltville, or a hotel. They'd block it.
How did they do that?
Well, they owned the people there. They owned the camp. They owned the housing, and they owned the stores. In fact, they owned it all. And we got in with a guy that was a good friend, or had been a good friend earlier, with John Lewis. And he had a motel at Chill Highway. And his son had a restaurant. And I went over there and got that restaurant to have a meeting in. They're having 3 meetings. They're scattered all over that western part of Virginia. And they blocked 2 of them. They got to that one. That boy told me that he had been informed that he couldn't let us have it. I went to the old man and told him, I said, "Now, we got this set up, we got a meeting here." And I don't see why this kid won't let us have it. He said, "You got it." We had a meeting there, and just as it would be, one of the representatives' name was Duty, and he was the rudest fellow you ever saw in your life. We went in there on Sunday to eat dinner, and he'd pick up a ribeye steak. You know how they curl around, and honest to God, the ends of them would be to his ears. But he done that. Well, that made them people a little bit angry, but we couldn't have it. That when I went into Baltimore to petition the board for an election, I stopped in Mr. Lewis's office, and he asked one of his assistants, Marlon Brennan, had been down there. He said, "Can they win it?" He said, "If Herman says we can win it, we can win it." We had 330 cards. We had to have 1/3. And remember, there's 1,137 people.
I'm doing the mental arithmetic.
We got out there and beat the bushes. They called me from Baltimore and told me they didn't have enough. We didn't, like 12 cars, having enough. We get out there and beat the bushes that night. Got them 12 cars. That guy came back down. He came down with the company's attorney from Baltimore. And the guy told him, the port agent told him, said, "They don't have enough to win that. You ain't got nothing to worry about." Told him, said, "We'd have had 342 cards altogether." Boy, that one killed that whole area. Them preachers and what have you, it was all white people working that. And you wouldn't believe the condition they worked in under. They're working that caustic. I don't know where you know what caustic is or not. It eats it.
Okay, yeah.
And they'd work in that without anything, just a handkerchief or something tied around their face. They'd come out of there with their nose bleeding, their eyes all red and what have you, and couldn't hardly live. But they was anxious to get some. Now, once we organized the thing, we had to be mighty careful and get somebody in from out of town, because the old lawyer, his name was Stewart, his last name. His brother was the old personnel man, not the one at the present time, but the old one. And the way they used to do in there, they'd tell that them people have worked. Now you go work for Mr. Stewart on, say he had corn to hoe or plowing to do on the farm. You go work for him for 75 cents or $1 a day, whatever they were paying, or you don't have a job at the plant. And them poor guys done that for years and years. And that's, I mean, it was, they used it just like a family, only the family got it all.
Tell them what happened the night before the election.
They, again, excuse me, I've been in bed ever since I seen you.
He wanted to come get it over because he was afraid that he might not be able to.
And they was going to have a big blowout. They made all of the power with steam. They had, I believe it was 12 big boilers. Made the power to run the mines, the plant, the camp, and everything. And one reason they didn't want nobody in there is getting their saws from below the ground, and it was falling in. One day you'd go up through there, and there'd be a break in the road as thick as that is. Next day you go and it'd be a 6 or 8 inch break, and it fell in on the back of that thing and took houses with it, where it went so deep. And one of the superintendents moved his family down to a motel. Old Brock told him, that plant manager told him that if he moved down there, not to come back to work. And he had to go back, and that thing was falling in right at him. But to scare us out of there more, they built a little casket, a little white casket, and they put Herman on it. And they put that on the fire truck. They owned it all. And planted dynamite. That was, if you've never been through that part of the country, that's all big now. And it was right between White Top and Big Blair Mountain, there below Roanoke. And they was going to haul that around. They had orders to let the steam engine blow its whistle at a certain time if we lost. And they was going to haul that casket through the camp with all of it, with the convoy of all of the trucks, company trucks and everything going through there, and show them they defeated us. But as the good Lord had it, we beat him.
What did you use? Well, let me ask first, Ms. Adkins, did this just scare the dickens out of you, or did you laugh it off?
Well, at times I was scared, and at other times I know that he was pretty good at taking care of himself.
Yeah.
And when he was working up there was some of the men that would escort him in there and out in the firemen. And right up there, right close to the time of the election, they would escort him from out of there. That much threatening. I think maybe that was probably the worst place you ever worked at, as far as being a threat.
No, Wyden, West Virginia was worse than that. It's cold. Yeah. But now, you know, I got to...
You was working on Ritter Lumber Company, and we lived in Logan, West Virginia. And there was somebody come to the house and threatened killing me too.
Yeah.
He wasn't there. They told me.
What did they tell you?
They're going to hunt him down too.
We had
You
good
won that one too, though, didn't you?
I had two men working at what's the name of that place in Tennessee? Crossville. No, it wasn't Crossville. Newport. And them men called me and told me that they was going to run them out of there. They was working on a furniture factory, just 130 people in the whole factory. But said the company had got up the businessmen and they was going to run them out of there. And I said, well, wait, I'll be on up there. I was crazy for saying that. But I got out and hit the road of going up there. I got on 50 foot of a side road. Here come an old Mercury car out of there. and the guy rolling the window down with his rifle out at the window. And they shot at me, and I had a Pontiac, and at that time, Pontiac had a little window up front of
Yeah,
in and
that
out.
window?
Yeah. And I'm sure they told him to aim at that. And boy, he hit it, but I was by him. We were both going faster than he thought. And it went into my windshield. Now that's when she got scared.
That's when I asked him to let me, he said he was going back. He come home, he had his face glass and cut his face and everything. And we had the 3 girls at the time. And I said, well, I'll leave Dottie with the 2 little ones, and you get in the back seat and I'll drive you up there. And he said, no, I don't want you to do that. So he got in another car, and he went back, he got a shotgun, and went back. But he couldn't find him nowhere. Nobody bothered him.
I went to the sheriff, and the sheriff was a doctor. And one that carried his bag and out to the house. And the words he told me was, you find him, get a warrant for him, and I'll arrest him. I said, Sheriff, you're crazy. I said, is this way you carry on the law here? He said, well, that's all I can do. And I just called him over. I said, you see that shotgun laying there in the back of that car? I said, it's got 3 slugs in it. Don't you or none of your deputies try to stop me on the road, no place. If you do, I'll empty it. But he didn't. We organized that place. It went out of business. I was interested because they'd been so dirty about that. I was interested in getting it behind it. And we
Tell her about what happened when we first came to Georgia.
well, nothing happened when we first came.
She's going to make you tell me, you know.
Tell her.
About you going to the meeting and the police having the building surrounded.
Oh yeah. We had a meeting at an aluminum plant, and we represent all of the big aluminum plants. The steel workers do. They're organized. But this was a little old aluminum chair factory, wasn't it? And I called a meeting about between Loganville and Stone Mountain. And I got in the meeting, it was hot, Lord mercy, it was hot. Here come the police up and stuck their head in every window. I talked more law than's ever been law that day, and talked right at them. I said, I tell the people who's all standing around outside and all of them hot, you see the reason you can't organize you people and why you need an organization. You got dictatorship. And we organized that one, but we didn't get a contract, did we? No. Now I went down to William L. Bonnell Company. That's a aluminum extrusion plant.
This is still the steelworkers.
This is for the steelworkers.
No. That's District 50.
Okay.
Oh yeah, but you're right.
Okay. Sorry.
And we organized, got into organizing that, and they was spread out from here to LaGrange, Georgia. 50 miles spread. That beat all I ever saw. And there's 1,120 some of them. We organized them and won it by 7. And how come as to, she is with me. I got a call from Mr. Lewis's office, and he said, there's one of plant. We had it organized in Baton Rouge, chemical plant, and said there's one in LaGrange, Georgia. We took out and went to LaGrange. I'd take her and the children with me on the first time hunting the plant and whatever. But we went down there and found it, and what they had was an engineer's facilities at LaGrange, and there's just about 35, 40 of them. They said, now, Bonnell just bought not Bonnell. Bonnell had sold to this company out of Baton Rouge, and we went up there and stopped at the Bonnell plant. It had no fences around it, no flays, all just open. But they had come down from Ohio to get away from the Union. They had closed their plant in Ohio and come down to get away from the Union. So I saw two big black guys. I told Gladys, I said, I'm going to make a contact right here. We pulled up beside them, and they was getting out of the car. And I talked to them and told them who I was and what I was doing. And I went back not too long after that and run into them guys, and they had done and been talking to them. But the first thing it done, had a little meeting in a motel, and the company fired 5 of the people that was at that motel. All 5 of them, and they had excuses for firing them. What they done, they fired one. He had dropped a log of aluminum too hot, and it had clogged it up. That was a no-no in the plant, but there had never been nothing done before. And he had one that went out and got barbecue sandwiches for the group. Well, I just found out that the boss had sent out a month and a half or 2 months before that and got sandwiches for his group. And each one of them had something like that, and they apparently had good excuses, but I knew they didn't. So I filed charges and told the guy, I said, now just hold up on organizing until we get the charges. Charges came down, they came down in our favor. And they put them back to work and made them pay him. Well, about that time, just after they made them pay him, and we got a good campaign ready for election, the president told me, he said, I want you to go out and be the chief organizer. And I'll have to take you out of your district down there and put another guy in it. But said, I want you to be the chief organizer for the organization. So he did. I went into Bristol, Virginia, and went to work on they had 4 guys in there, and I was coordinating the thing and on a Raytheon plant. Then he called me up on a Friday, and he said, I want you back in Atlanta on Monday. He said them nutheads down there had lost everything we got. I had organized Bowman Transportation Company with 2,100 people. And they had Bowman, we had to count against part-time employees. Them employees worked at Chevrolet. They worked at, well, Chevrolet plant was right close to it. Ford plant and all of the plants. They'd work extra time with Bowman. And they let them beat them out of 1,300 members, just like that. And Elwood told me, he said, now, Herman, I don't want you to tell nobody. I want you to go home and stay close till Monday. He said Monday morning, walk in that office, and there'd be a letter from me assigning you as director, back as director, and taking Hoover out of it is Lee Hoover from Ohio that was in there, taking him out of it. Well, had done that, but I was threatened on that.
How did they threaten you on this one?
The local union officers was non-union, Lord. We had it organized at one time. And they sent me in here in 58, and I'll tell you this one on her. Sent me in 58 to check it out, make an investigation, and make a recommendation. Brought her and the children uptown, Fox Theater, right across from Fox Theater to
The old
Old Georgian Hotel.
Yep.
I said, now, I'll be back. I'm going to Georgian Hotel, and you can go and you can take the children and go to the show. And she had never been in Atlanta. You can imagine what. So I had a meeting with the guys and I asked the representative, I said, what's wrong with Bowman? He had just killed a guy over in Gadsden, Alabama. Some of the guys got on him. He was trying to organize the construction workers. They got on him and he shot one of the guys. Took them 10 years to get him out of it. Anyway, he says, Hammond said, if they don't get me and Ed Hollifield both out of here, said we're going to lose. Well, that was my report. And sure enough, they lost it. The teams just took it away from them. They had a big strike. Then I organized. But they was so young. They didn't have a bit of backbone. There wasn't 25 people in that whole group that had any backbone. Had one boy by the name of Atkinson. That was Bowman's wife's nephew, wasn't he?
You said there was some kid out there before.
And he was a good man and elected president. But then they got out there and they wanted to strike, and if you strike a plant like that without trying to settle a grievance, you get sued. You lose the whole thing. And I told the guys and they wouldn't believe me. They got in on that, and they threatened me. I was at the plant getting them back to work, but the representative I had, he didn't have no guts. He took his phone off the hook, and I had to get another representative to go down and see what the matter, that he wasn't answering his phone. And because he was afraid, and but we got it settled.
Tell her about the Bonnell thing when you went to Bristol.
Bristol, Tennessee?
You went to Bristol, Tennessee then.
I was telling you about me going to Bristol, Tennessee and working on Raytheon
Yeah.
as a chief organizer. Well, we had a meeting in Canada. The board, that's when the Expo was over there. We went over there for a meeting, and I had assigned that Hoover here as director, and they got down there, and these people is very, very touchy here. Get down there and got some beer and whiskey in tubs, put them in the back of the car, got something to eat like bologna and ham and spam and so forth. Them people are going up there putting their hands in it and making sandwiches. They lost that thing by 100 votes.
Now this was the first election on William Bonnell,
Okay.
and he had it set up for the election. The other men come in here, and they lost it.
Then when he told me to come back in here and take over, I started a campaign on that. Went back to work and won it the next election, won it big next election.
One more thing. I've got a bunch of questions on my list to ask you, but one more thing I wanted to ask about threats. As I warned you, I was going to ask you how you got that bullet in your side.
Do what?
How'd you get that bullet in your side? You've got a 32 in your side still, don't you?
We don't talk about things like that.
Oh, it's long past now. I won't tell anybody, I swear.
The mines that her father worked at, we had been trying to organize it. I was working at Paragon Ilcoin, and we was trying to organize Henry Clay, a mine of cement and salvage. And they went back non-union, and we got a guy killed over there. And what happened, another guy got killed, but he claimed to be a company man. He was a guard, but he really was on our side. And we got down there. I was just an old young boy at that time. I think I was a little over 15 years old. Got in a fight with this guy. And at that time, he didn't have nothing to fight with. I had a set of homemade nuts. Took the handle off of a garbage can like that and filed notches in it across it and used it as steel nerve. Well, that guy, I had it in my back pocket and under my handkerchief. And I started back there to get it, and that guy had a little old 32 squeezer. And he just cut down on me and just hit the flash right there in that side and lodged in there. It wouldn't go through a pawpaw bush that big anyway. So,
You don't know what a pawpaw bush is.
Sure I do. Yeah, you're long enough to know that.
and I stayed, all they done to me is take me to the hospital and swab that out at that time. But he stayed in the hospital 27 days. When he shot me, I just had them nooks out far enough to hit him right along there. I just laid that open. Now they'd put you in under the jail for doing that. I bet you when we was at Kingston, West Virginia, I bet you there was 10 times that the law come to our house to arrest me because I'd been in a fight. And they wouldn't arrest me to say arrest me. They'd say, Herman, you need to pay a fine. If you don't pay a fine, they'll come down and arrest you and charge you something else. The law was on my side. I'd go pay that fine. But going to West Virginia, John O'Leary, from Pennsylvania, anyway, John O'Leary, he was vice president in charge of He wasn't at that time vice president. He is in charge of organizing for the mine workers. And he asked me to go to Kingston, at one of the cement and salvage plant where we had got the boy killed and where I'd got shot. And but that wasn't close to the mines. That was down 6 miles down below that. And he asked me to go over there. 1938. He said, if you go in there and stay till after April the 1st. See, we struck April the 1st. Mine workers did all the time. He said, I'll give you a job with the mine workers back in District 30. That's back where I was working. Well, I didn't want to go, but I went. When I got over there, there was 1,800 miners. And there was 41 of them that didn't belong to the Union. And West Virginia was a place that if you got of them, they had to belong to the Union. And he told me that he wanted them organized before April the 1st so that they wouldn't be a threat to their local union. Well, the guy they had in there was from Alabama, and he had killed a black guy at that time. And it was about a third of the people that worked there was black. And they wouldn't listen to him for nothing. Perry Miller. And had a split between the two groups. So I went in there and started to work. And out of the 41, I had 23 fist fights. One man I had 3 fights with him. Little old bitty guy is a good guy, but he just let the company handle it. And the last time, I worked him over pretty good. What he'd do, he'd go up to the mines and he'd go to the mines, and when the people would see him at the mines, they'd pour the water out and go home. Shut the mine down. I said, no, don't do that. I'll handle it. And he come back the last time. The company had put him as foreman. You go through the mountain from Kingston over to Cold River. And there was a substation over there, and they had him out there working on stuff. He was an electrician. Had him out there and told him he was a foreman. Well, on our contract, the foreman wouldn't work. I told him, I said, now, Snake, you know better than that.
Snake? What's his name?
Owen Neal was his name, but we call him Snake. And I said, you're keeping all these people from going to work. You can't do that. Oh, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And he thought the company would stand up for him. I like to beat him to death. But he come out then and told him when I left there, that man had tears in his eyes more than anybody else. He said, I let Herman down more than anybody, and he done more for us. And but I got out of there, getting back to John O'Leary, telling me to go in there. He told me that I'd get out quick as the strike was over in April. I got out of there in 1950, 12 years later. And then they put me on District 50 payroll and sent me to Logan at $250 a month. And that's what we had, is $250 a month.
We were paying $50 a month house rent.
And all they give us for expenses, 3 cents a mile for your car, and 35 cents a day for your lunch. $3 a night for motel or hotel. And they didn't want you to spend more than $12.50 a half, $25 a month. Well, we had a meeting, and Raymond Lewis, R.O. is called, was at the meeting. And the regional director was explaining that. I said, I'm not going to work for that. I'm not going to work to spend my money for nothing. And boy, Raymond took the floor, and he said, no, and I don't want none of the rest of you to do that either. He said, the mine workers is bigger than that. And of course, wages was froze at that time. That was 1950. They had froze, and the next rate I got put me up to $271, and up to $300.
How long did it take to get up to 300?
I guess it was about 2 years, wasn't it?
12 years to get out and get into District 50 position.
Then
You know what I wanted to ask you about? While we're on the subject of violence generally, I'm still on the mine workers. Tell me about the Yablonsky. You showed me his picture in this book.
Joe Yablonsky was an international board member. Had one in each district. Sometimes he'd be president, sometimes he wouldn't. This is Yablonsky right here.
Where are you going?
Mr. Atkins showed me a picture of Yablonsky as a much younger man.
And
Good-looking guy, too.
he was running against Tony Ball. Tony's not on that. I don't think he's on that picture. Now, these two guys was on a commission. Ray Thompson and Tom Rainey was on a commission when I was in Logan. What happened, that was Island Creek Coal Company. And the guy in there was the name of Bill Blazer. Go ahead and ask me about Yablonsky.
Okay, tell me about Yablonsky. Tell me what happened with that final murder, well, with his murder.
Frankly, I don't think anybody knows the truth, but I think Albert Pass, he was the secretary of that District 19 at that time, and Jim Radding was the president. And they was in Tony Ball's office. Tony had taken over. Tom Kennedy had died, and Mr. Lewis had resigned. And Tony Ball was acting president. And they was in Jim Radding's office. Albert Pass, Tony, and Tony says Yablonsky was going to run against Tony. He had just run against him and lost, but he was building up, was going to run against him the next time. And Tony says they have to be something done with that guy. Albert Pass says, let me do it. And Albert was one of them Kentucky corn crackers. And of course, poor Tony didn't know no better. And he said, okay. Well, they went back to Kentucky. And of course, Albert Pass, being the secretary of the district, wrote Tony a letter and asked him for organizing money. And when he asked him for the organizing money, it wasn't for organizing, it was for to pay these two boys, one out of Cleveland High and one someplace else, but to go in there and take care of Joe. And they went in, and instead of taking care of Joe. Albert Pass testified that they went in and his wife and daughter woke up and they knew that they had to get them before they got to Tony, and they killed him before they got to Jablonski. And that was the worst thing in the world. I went in Mr. Lewis's office and asked him why he didn't take back over the mine workers. He said, "Herman, I can't." He said, "Energies are running out to tore my shoes now." And of course, he was an old man and been through an awful lot. And he had lost his brother and lost his daughter.
What kind of man was Jablonski? Y'all knew Jablonski, yes?
I didn't, but he did.
Oh yeah, he come to our house.
Yeah, I know I met him, but I didn't know nothing.
Yeah, Joe come in there with Peter Philippi on that investigation. Ray Thompson and Tom Rainey come in together, and John Grisoni and John Germintz come in, and somebody else. Anyway, this was the big tragedy in the history of the mine workers. Of course, John Lewis wouldn't put up with that. No, he wouldn't let you fight one of the members in the local union. I've seen him in the convention come back, and I've got some pictures I was going to give the guy that was director up there.
Les.
Yeah, I was going to give him some pictures to put up on the wall of the conventions. And it had, of course, all of us. I thought that was somebody I knew.
It had all of you, in the pictures, had all of you together?
Had a moving camera. Had all of them there. But this was the board members as was suggested by John Lewis and elected in each district.
Did who did Lewis suggest pretty much was that who people would vote for? Did they trust him enough?
Oh yeah. Oh, these guys that died for him. This guy here, Grisoni, John Grisoni, couldn't hardly read and write his name. But he would have died for Mr. Lewis. He went to the West. And Peter Philippi from Ohio there, beside of Jablonski. All of them guys, this Thompson's brother over here, he had a brother that he said that he killed a guy in Ohio, but it wasn't true. He just done that to get a job. He was just in a big fight and had this. He wanted to get somebody to protect him, and he claimed it when he was trying to organize. His name was Freddie Thompson.
The brother's name?
The brother, there's three of them. Ray was the best one of the group. Freddie and Bill and Ray wasn't it? Yeah.
The Thomasons. Okay. Yeah.
Do what?
I was just repeating their name for the recording. How did you all end up here in Georgia?
We were transported here.
Here.
Tennessee.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
Actually, we changed our name when this lawsuit came down, and we got freed from that. we changed our name to District 50 Allied and Technical Workers.
Technical workers, okay.
And we, by that time, Denny Lewis had died. And Elwood Moffett was vice president, and he took over. And I mean, he took over. And I was in Kingsport, Tennessee, and had been for years. And 9 years, really. And he said he's going to call me up and told me he's going to, thinking about closing that out, closing that district out. I said, well, you'll lose if you do. I said, what are you going to do with me? Put me over in, I was a board member, and he could not bar me.
He was elected to his job.
And he said, well, I was thinking about sending you down to Georgia.
Like sending to Siberia, right?
This is the smallest region there was in the whole area, and it covered all of Georgia and a part of South Carolina.
Didn't have about 600 members.
600 members, what a head. Gotcha.
They were losing some of that.
Yeah, the
They were losing some of that.
first plant that organized here, the first sizable plant that organized here was 507 people, Kaggle Poultry. They didn't know what to think. They said you couldn't organize in Georgia. But we organized them.
Is this early 60s?
Do what?
Early 1960s?
Yeah.
How'd you end up in the steelworkers then?
All right. Elwood Moffett was president, and Angelo Cepalo was vice president.
Right.
They got into a political fight, and they were destroying the organization. Angelo wanted to take them to the machinists, take us to the machinists. And Elwood wanted to take us into steelworkers, because Elwood had been acquainted with steelworkers, and see, a lot of our people, well, you'll note in this book, your Philip Murray was vice president of the mine workers when we organized the CIO, and they pulled out. The guy that was first vice president of the steel workers was a guy from Charleston, West Virginia, out of District 17. And he was out of the mine workers.
So it tended to be that the steel workers were closer to the mine
Oh,
workers.
yeah. Well, we had more in common. Both of us had industrial type union, and the other union was craft type. So we had more in common with them, and we had a terrible fight. She was in that convention when they busted up, and the women was up in the side where the press goes, up in the press box, and Cepalo's son come up there and throwed a stick in at the window, didn't he, at the door?
Well, we had Black Panthers to come up there with big sticks and beat the tables up, and all of us sitting up there.
The Black Panthers?
Yeah. We had to get the National Labor Relations Board to hold an election.
You got
That
one.
band. They had sticks,
We're down here working, and Cepalo come up there and got up on just like those bars up there around there. Got up on there and was standing over the mic talking, and they had to get security to go and get him down. He wasn't supposed to be there. All of us ladies was up there around sitting at tables and what have you. First thing we know, here come the Black Panthers in there. and started beating on the tables with, oh, they had big sticks. It wasn't just little sticks, it was like baseball bats.
This is like a cast of thousands. What were they doing there?
Well,
It was to break up.
They was to break up the meetings, is what it was.
Were they paid?
Cepalo had got him
Evidently,
in.
Cepalo did it.
Cepalo was the director, regional director in New York at one time. And he was this kind of a man. He'd send the guys out to a small plant, say 50 or 100 people, and tell them, well, all of the people is down to the district office. Come on down there, and when you get them down there, and sign them up. And that's the only organizing they done. But he was that kind of a guy. He was very rude and dominant. Actually, in that convention, one of the guys out of Richmond, Virginia, and I was on the board. There's only 10 of us at that time. And we had agreed that we wouldn't bank nobody until we got together and agreed who we would bank. Well, first thing I know, this guy had got on the ballot as vice president. Bob Fole is his name.
Bob Fole.
Fole. Bill Foley from Boston was running with Cepalo. Running with Cepalo. And Marlon Brennan was running with Elwood, so Bob Fole got on went down in the convention floor that was having an awful time. I had them cakes and everything.
You may be able to go, but...
And I asked Bob, I said, Bob, why did you double cross me? Why did you do this? Oh, I give some reason. And somebody slapped him. And he fell on the floor. And they went to the podium and asked Elwood, somebody hollered and asked what happened. Oh, he said somebody fainted down there. And
I was sitting up there and I saw commotion and he was down there. I know where he was at. My brother come up there and I said, go down and see about Herman. Something's happened down there, go see what it is. And he went down there and come back and said, oh, said Bob Fole was fainted. But you know who had made him faint.
Yeah.
well,
So this ends up with the steelworkers.
Yeah.
that's when we was merging with steelworkers.
Right.
See, when they got in that fight,
Excuse me.
steelworkers had a good pension. In fact, I'm drawing it now. And it had more benefits for us. Plus, it was a union that we was acquainted with, an industrial type union. And do you know what I'm talking about, industrial type? Okay. So we backed Elwood. And we had to wait 2 days. The National Labor Relations Board came over and set up their own booth, watched them and all, till the election was over. There had to be a referendum vote of the membership before that could carry them, moving from completely closing the union and going with somebody else.
Now you got into the steel. Okay, let's jump you over right into the steelworkers. You've walked out. The merger's happened, and what's your job with the steelworkers?
I come in as staff representative. I was a regional director here. But they had a regional director that was elected, and they had sub-directors that was over a group of men. And there was a guy by the name of Charlie Mathieu. You got his...
As a matter of fact, yeah.
And he was sub-director. Then he wanted to retire, got kind of sick, wanted to retire, and they let him retire. And they appointed me as sub-director. And I stayed in as sub-director until I retired.
And what did you do as sub-director?
I had all of the local unions in Georgia to see that they were serviced, and to service some of them myself, and to organize what we could organize. We organized Tifton Aluminum down at Tifton, organized Baxley, Filter Rossum at Baxley, and several places were organized.
Did being with the steelworkers then in that job seem awfully quiet to you after the mine workers in District 50?
Do what?
Did it seem awfully quiet to you with the steelworkers then? I mean, were you getting a little bored maybe with the steelworkers? Or was it a relief?
They wouldn't do much, tell you the truth.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do much. And my daughter is, or our daughter is staff rep for steelworkers now.
Is that right?
You know Charlie Key.
Okay.
Charlie
Yeah, she's
White.
Oh, and of course, and Vicky then. Yeah, all right. I just
Vicky's
met Charlie the other day.
That's our middle daughter.
Okay.
She was my secretary for a long time.
About 12, 13 years.
Yeah. And they wasn't going to let her stay in here. They told me and told her, we're going to send you to Richmond, Virginia.
Up in Virginia.
That's where the youngest girl's at. We're going to send you up there. We don't need another secretary in here. Well, never said a word. We had a meeting. And in that meeting, we had to acquaint the membership with the steelworkers. And Vicki was the in charge in that meeting. I had put her in charge of auditing the books and filling out the LM forms and the things that the government forms they had to fill out. Their eyes got about that big. They didn't know what they were doing, but before it was over. And she had done and withdrew her pension status with District 50, and she put it back in and stayed here in Atlanta. And she went for years trying to get on the staff person, and they wouldn't let her on this little diehards. And she finally kept going. She said, you put me on or I'm going to the board, one of the two. And she would have went. She just had that much of her mother in her.
Ms. Adkins is pointing at Mr. Adkins now, too. Now, Atlantic Steel, so much went on around Atlantic Steel. You had Lester Maddox had worked there. That must have presented a little bit of a problem for the union when his election came around.
That was before I was here.
I bet you gave a big sigh of relief on that one.
Lester Maddox had a restaurant down the street. I think it's on get the name of the street now. He had a restaurant, and that was where the famous pick handles come from.
Yeah.
Was that restaurant.
Our first working class governor, which gave he was our first working class governor.
Yeah.
Gave the unions a little crisis of conscience there.
He wasn't no working class.
No? You think he just paraded that way?
He phrased it so he could get some votes. But he was a redneck from the word go.
Were you in when the women tried to break the gender line in Atlantic Steel and get those jobs in Atlantic Steel?
Do what?
Remember when the women tried to get those jobs in Atlantic Steel? Were you still in there
No.
with the steel? Okay, I bet that was right after yours. I'll have to ask Vicki about that.
No, they. What do you mean at the jobs now?
At some point, and I'm thinking it's the 70s, but my memory's worse than yours. What's her name? Kathy McGuire, Louise Runyon, one or two other women went to the Atlantic Steel Corporation and said, we want to be hired as steel workers. And between the union and the company, it seemed like no one knew which way to turn.
Well,
It might have been after you retired, though.
it was before I come there. Before 1972. Before we married with steelworkers. But they had, I'll tell you this, they had two guys in there that was strictly against women or black. I went out there to some meetings. Had a guy by the name of Charlie Parker, but you couldn't do nothing with him. He was a friend to the regional director, Bruce Thrasher. And you'd try to direct him to do something, and he'd go around you to get it done the other way. I was over there in a meeting. I forget what it was. Anyway, one of the black men spoke up. Charlie Parker, he's dead now. Retired too. Was carrying on the meeting. And that black guy said, why did I do that? He said, by God, because I said to. I mean, that's the way they run it. And that's the reason they never did get no further with Atlantic Steel than they got. And I went out there to, I think the last meeting I was two out there. They had an old timers meeting where they're getting them signed up for retired people. And no organization in it. So. Now they had a young man that had worked for me. He was a pretty good boy at that time. Named Ira Richardson.
Ira Richardson's.
And he was running it like Charlie Matthias and Charlie Parker had run it. And then people just wouldn't have that.
So they got rid of him. Did they get rid of him then? Did they vote him out?
As president, they put him. He was on the payroll working for me, part-time. And when he got into that trouble, they put him on full-time.
I see.
And,
Is that like kicking him upstairs?
do what?
Is that like kicking him upstairs? Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to kick the business manager upstairs in baseball.
Let me ask you this. We'll get into some philosophical questions. If you could live one part of your union life again, I know naturally the first thing you picked to live again was your marriage, but if you could pick one part to live again, what would you choose of your work in the labor movement?
That's a tough question. I suppose the area from that's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
But when I met the Lewises, they was fair and honest men. And I had met a lot of these guys that's in here, these board members, and they was honest men, and that was something that you had to take into consideration if you was building a future. Now it was hard. I'm going to tell you something, and you better not say anything about it. If you do, I'll hit you with my cane.
My lips are sealed.
It's a secret.
Don't tell me
Polly Chung.
I was born in Kentucky to a woman out of wedlock. And I got a second grade education, started into the third. That's all I had. But I took advice from John Lewis. He said when him and his wife married, that she was a school teacher. And she started learning him to learn, take a dictionary, take him out 3 words, learn the words and the meaning, all of the meanings of the word. And that's the way he got his education. He had a second grade education too. John Lewis did. And I started that theory, and I've negotiated with the top people in the country, with Hugo Black's son for Meade Corporation, for Art Gertson, with Old Matheson, with the guy from Ethel Corporation, that's William L. Von L. Ethel Corporation, I couldn't think of it. I was in negotiations with Lester Lewis in 1949, 50. Signed the contract, and you had a guy that was over the Southern the Southern Co-operator Association, the name of J.D. Francis. He was president of Island Creek Coal Company. And there's a story going back. Mr. Lewis was from Illinois. And they had a meeting, he had a meeting of the board in the bottom of the building where the coal operators had their meeting in their offices in town. Well, he was getting $600 a year. A year. No, he's getting $600 a month. And he got a call. The coal operators. They asked him to come up. He excused himself from the board meeting. Went upstairs, and they offered him $80,000 bonus and give him a job at $50,000 a year. Be on the coal operator's side. He just looked at him right mean and said, "I'm not for sale." Well, we was in that meeting in Bluefield, West Virginia, had a joint meeting of the coal operators and the committee for the mine workers to negotiate the contract in 49 and 50. And old J.D. Francis sitting at his end table, Mr. Lewis was sitting over there. J.D. got up, took his clipboard and said to the guys, said, "Well, guys, we just well to go." Said, "We ain't getting no place." You know how much Lewis handled him? He said, "Sit down, J.D. JD, said, I've got a story to tell you. And he reminded him, he said, now, he told the year it was. He said, you people offered me $80,000 and offered me a $50,000 life guaranteed salary. He said, I told you then I wasn't for sale, didn't I? He said, now last year, he said, I collected over $200 million from my people from a welfare fund. I said, JT, if you want to go, there's the damn door. JT said, what's next, Mr. Lewis? That's the way they handle it.
It sounds like, if I were to ask you your mentors, the people who influenced you, it sounds like Lewis would be at the top of the list.
I'd say, yeah, R.O. and Ray. They were people early in my life that influenced me, like Tom Rainey. There's a Ray Daniels that I thought an awful lot of. We went into Harlan, Kentucky. But Ray Daniels turned red. And of course, he wasn't like the nobody. He wasn't really there. He was socialist.
Pink.
And
Why did you like him?
because they had guts that stand up for what they thought. They didn't, you could lay down and go to sleep, and then the guy that cut this finger off, here, that hand in the mine, a black guy. I would have laid down and been comfortable, and the Malley engine are coming at me and knowing that he would stop it. That's how much confidence I had. We was at Wyden, West Virginia one time, and I took 30-some of them over there. 132, I believe. Anyway, out of 31 days in April, 30 days we struck the first day of April, but 31 days after that, we were still striking. And I'd been on the picket line 29 days. This guy come up, and he was a scab down at Wyden. Come up and bummed the guys out of some money. The guy had sold his knife to get some money to get him a drink. I didn't drink. If I had, I'd have been dead 4 times. Anyway, he took their money and give it to took their whiskey. They gave him the money to go buy the whiskey. He bought the whiskey and took the whiskey to the other scab. Well, they were going to kill him. And I told them, no, let me handle it. It was a rough place. And I followed him out to the top of the mountain, didn't see him, but they got an injunction against us. The company did, and we couldn't go. There was a road around the hill like this, around the camp. The camp set down in here. Road down here you go in. Road over here you go in. And that guy went up a sheep path up there and out on the road. We got after him, or I got after him. And I didn't see him, but we were sitting out there when they got the injunction against us. It's cold, and we built up a big wood fire. Sitting around shooting the bull and what have you, and here come that guy up the road. And I know that if the guys got a hold of him, they'd kill him and we'd be in trouble. And I said, now, you guys stay here. Nobody down there but me. I went out the road, but we took cross ties and put across the road to keep anybody from running. They'd been coming out there shooting at us and what have you. And I went down and I asked him, I said, why did you take them, I called the guy's name, why did you take his money and give it that bunch of scabs, that whiskey, that bunch of scabs? Because I wanted to. I said, that's what I'm going to do to you. And I hit him, and he just stretched out down the road. But we had a black guy who was a real good guy. George Brown had the car, and his was wild as the devil. And he come out of that place. He'd been down there to get the mail and what have you. And he come out of that place and he hit them cross ties, busted 4 tires and tore his. So that guy, I had just hit him, and he just stretched out, and the blood was tickling from his nose and his mouth down the road, and they thought he was dead. And they wasn't going to be caught now. So
the car, their life, I guess.
nothing happened to him.
No. Did you turn him around?
Do what?
Did you turn him around?
He just, we got out of there.
Oh, I see.
We got a boy killed. That's when the state police set up like this road over here was coming out from the camp down here. But the state police set up 3 machine guns here and told us not to go down in this area and told them not to come up in there because they was going to shoot whatever noise was down there. The only time I ever carried a pistol in my life, one of the guys had a pistol was with us and he was afraid to carry it. And I knew the state police and I went over there where there's at with that pistol down under my belt, sat there and played cards with him. And that night, see that guy going right there? That guy going here? White-headed guy.
He just walked down towards Macy's.
That guy is the guy that counted the votes at Bowman Transportation.
Is that right? Isn't that funny?
I paid him $450 to count the votes at Bowman. Mm-hmm. We didn't use the board. Mm-hmm. And
Who was that man?
that's
And they lived up the street there from us for a while. Joe.
Ordinary. Joe Lane. Ordinary. He said he hired his secretary. I don't think he did. But
anyway, you were playing cards with state police.
State police.
With a gun under your belt.
Yeah, and we sat there and played all night. And it's all right. They didn't say nothing. Mm-hmm. And in West Virginia, there's a law if you carry a concealed weapon, you get, if you carry any short gun, you get 6 months and $100 set fine. I had several to do that. In fact, I had a little judge to reverse himself on one of those.
Why?
He, what was that little judge? Judge Fripp, wasn't it?
Talking about the one out at
Fayetteville. He had find this guy. This guy had a gun and carried it mine. The guys got in a fight with him, and he lost his gun. And the judge gave him 6 months and a $100 fine. And he had a child to get sick. He lived up the creek from us. Had a child to get sick, and his wife asked me if I'd see if I could get him out of jail so he could come home and have her take care of the child. I went out there. The judge said, I never don't know of a judge reversing himself. And you might have asked some of these other boys around here. He said, I'll let you know in the morning. Next morning, he said, he's on his way home.
He can charm a butterfly.
Well, he got you.
You said something about hanging somebody. The last person I ever heard be sentenced to death by hanging, that little judge done it. Lemuel Thomas Steed. He killed a druggist in Montgomery, West Virginia. Laywayed him, brought him home with him. That guy had worked him as his janitor and what have you for years. He killed the guy and took $8,000 off of him. What the guy done, he went down to the bank and got the money to cash everybody's check on payday. And this guy knew it. And that little old judge said, I sentence you, Lemuel Thomas Steed, to hang by the neck in Moundsville, West Virginia, by the neck until you're dead, 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 on the 18th day of October.
We went over and watched that.
Yeah.
The only time that guy ever changed the expression on his face. There was a little boy staying with his grandmother up on the hill at Camp House. And this guy had come down to the trash dump and had killed the druggist. And that little boy heard that shot, and he seen that guy run around the car and get on the other side. He said it was somebody killed a dog. And when he said somebody killed a dog, that guy grinned. And that's the only time he ever changed his expression. Tough.
Chilling. If you had the chance to stand up on a stage and talk to all the young union members right now, what advice would you give them?
I'd say you will pay, and pay dearly, if you don't stand up and be counted now. You better go to the polls and vote. You better know who you're voting for. And you'd better stand up for yourself. Because as long as I worked in and around the mines, I never drew a day's vacation. Never drew a holiday. Never had no time off. So we got a contract in here, and you'll see right over the back of this, the Craig Lewis agreement, when Truman was there, when they were signed it. And he, in that contract, he had a clause that wouldn't stand up no place. Said the men will work as long as they're willing, able, and ready. Now that took a lot. So they had to take that out. That lasted 2 years. And they had
What advice would you give union members now, and union members' wives?
I would say you have to. Excuse me. I would say you have to stand up for what you believe in, and if your husband or your wife was trying to organize something, you would back them up.
Was there tried for treason during World War I?
And he came out of it, and he was supposed to be a tough guy, and he was president of District 17. Mel Triola was handling the field work in Logan and Williamson, West Virginia, Mango County. And he would let Island Creek Coal Company get away with bloody murder. So that's why I went in there. That's why they sent me in there. I didn't know it. But that's where they give me a job. Give me a job at with District 50. Regional office was in Pikeville, Kentucky. They transferred it the day I went in it. They transferred it to Charleston, West Virginia. So when I went in to talk to my regional director, Ray Lewis was sitting there. I talked to him. And they come to me and told me I'd been in there a few days and I'd got things straightened out, but pitiful the way they was doing the men. And the guy by the name of Kitchen was president of local Holding 16. And this don't mean anything to you, but to identify it. And he come in the office, and I just happened to go in the office because I knew there was something up that day. And they had cut 20-some people off of that mine and hired brand new people to take their place. And Triola told them in that meeting there wasn't nothing they could do about it. Well, I went downstairs. It was on the 3rd floor of the Browning building, and I went downstairs and waited. All right, waited till they come down, and I got this boy Kitchen, great old big blonde-headed boy. I said, guys, I said, I wouldn't take this. I told them, I introduced myself, and they didn't know who I was when I was up there in the district office. Kitchen said, I'll never forget it. He said, if I'd have known who you was, he said, I would have thrown that so-and-so out one day. I went over with him to the telegraph office. Got him to write out a telegram to John Lewis. And that's how come all them people come in on the board to investigate. And they had a meeting, they ordered a meeting, but they was going to run me out of Logan County. Bill and Charlie was. But they offered me a job. I was making $250 a month. They offered me a job at $600 a month. I said, no, I'll wait. And we went to meeting to Holden number 1. They had, Holden was on a creek called Island Creek. And they had several plants. They had 24 different mines that people was working at. And there was a meeting at Holden number 1. It was the most central located place. They met there and the guys come to me and the guys that I'd helped said they're going to run you out of Logan County and said we're not going to let it. Well, they wanted me to go on to the meeting. We went to the meeting and Bill Blizzard got up and said something. It was about me. Man, I hauled and raised up like that. Said, no, I don't want to say nothing about Herman. Said he's all right. And the regional director, Charlie Neal, had a little old 32 Spicer. He wanted me to carry that thing in the meeting. Said, you won't get me in jail for 6 months. So we got through that, and they didn't run me off there. And I had fights on the street that got put in jail one time. Only time I was ever in jail. As the guy was strictly against organized labor, was the mayor of Logan. And he had give word to the police that if we started any fights or anything, he wanted them to pick us up and bring us to jail. Well, this guy, we had some restaurants organized, something that plumb out of our way. But there's 93 of them, and you couldn't just throw them down. So this guy had a dress shop. We had a organizing campaign on a restaurant by the name of Brownie's restaurant. Had about 18 people. And this guy that owns a dress shop named Curry, and he came in, and I had a ticket to walk in the picket line, and I give him a camera, but it didn't have no film in it. And when he came out of there with something, she snapped his picture, and he threw a couple of Coca-Colas. He had a satin white dress on. He threw that Coca-Cola. Well, they told me about it, and I come in. I went down, and sure enough, Perry come down. He went in the place to get him something else. I think it's the next day or day after. I asked him, I said, but Perry, I said, why did you throw that Coke on the picket kid? And he came with some smart answer, and I wore him out. Well, he took off running and run up to the Justice of Peace, wanted to get a warrant from him. But he had grabbed at me and tore my shirt. I went up until I knew the officer, and I went up and told him, now I said, if he gets a warrant for me, write out one for him. And he said he can't do that. Oh, Jody Skaggs was the guy's name. He said, yes, he can. He said, when you touched him in a well with light, you're just as bad as he blacked your eyes. I come downstairs and was standing there. I didn't want to antagonize the guy. I was standing down there, leaned up against me, and her stepmother had bought me a big 3-bladed pearl handle knife. And this guy come by, and I wasn't watching him. I didn't. He come by, and he swung around that meter, kind of glanced me. I didn't have nothing to do nothing with that knife, and I ran my hand in my pocket, hit that knife, and he was about as far as over there. I started to throw it at him, and him were running, and I caught myself, and it hit the street. Knife hit the street. Well, police come down, a good friend of ours come down and arrested us, put us in jail. I was in charge of Disabled American Veterans Club in Logan, and they came down. I wasn't in there but a minute or two in here. I'm sorry. In Wyden, West Virginia, in that mine, the Elk River Coal and Lumber Company, we got a guy killed with a 22 automatic the first time. 22 high power, the first one I ever saw. And they picked up 2 of our guys with rifles. And we had a trial in Wyden, West Virginia. They wanted some of us to go there to give them moral support. So we went, got in there, and our old attorney, they asked questions and what have you. The guy that I hit, stretched out down the road, was there, and he had a patch on his face, and they asked him several questions. And they asked their land manager for Elk River Coal and Lumber if he knew that land. He said, I've been over every foot of it. And they had over 10,000 acres of land. Couldn't have been over 100. Well, when they got through asking this guy that I'd busted his mouth, said, I noticed you've got a patch on your mouth. What happened? He told him that some guy hit him, and he didn't know who it was. Some guy hit him. The old man Townsend, Tom Townsend, was our lawyer. And then Townsend said, well, what was you doing there? He said, I was a guard. Said, a guard said, who hired you? Said, the sheriff of the county. Said, the sheriff of the county hired you as a guard for Elk River Coal and Lumber Company? Said, yes. The lawyer for that company said, could we have a brief recess? They had a recess, and that was the last time we heard from that they turned those 2 boys loose.
You could never get away with things like that, no.
Well, you could do some things, but you couldn't get away with that. You have to do it more than undercover.
Do you have any regrets?
Do what?
Do you have any regrets?
Do you have any regrets of something in the world?
Oh, no regrets for organizing, no regrets for the fights I had in organizing, no. Now, the biggest thing that bothered me when I got out of service, she was young. And before I went in service, well, she was young. And she didn't understand the labor movement. And I couldn't tell her where I was going. And that was strange to her. And that irked her, and of course when it irked her, it tore both of us up. Now if I could change that and could have set her down and talked to her and tell her where I was going and how dangerous it was and so forth, I would redo that. But
Otherwise, no regrets.